All right, we're recording.
All right. So, hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. We are going to be talking about how to position yourself as an expert using social media. So it's overall how to position yourselves as an expert, but then how to utilize social media for that as well. So we are going to start chatting. We are recording this, and you will be getting the recording as well as the slides, so this deck, afterwards whenever Tyler has some time to send it to you guys over the next couple of days. And if you can just mute yourself, you don't have to be on video if you don't want, it's totally fine. But just make sure you're muted if there's any background noises. So I'm Holly. I'm the founder of Creative Solutions. It's a marketing agency in Newmarket. We have two sides of the business. One is strategic consulting. So we do business blueprinting and efficiency modeling, as well as marketing and branding blueprints. We also have a services division, which we do website design development, graphic design, and we specialize in social media management. So we really take that human approach to business success. And just a little bit of housekeeping information here. Again, you guys will get this recording as well as the deck afterwards. Feel free to take pictures of the screenshot and things like that, totally fine. This is your guys' information. If you are going to post anything on social media, like, look what I'm doing today, you can tag Creative Solutions and the Newmarket Chamber as well. If you have any questions, please ask them at the end of the presentation. There will be a whole entire section that we'll have for a Q&A. So write all your questions down. You can also add them in the chat feature in Zoom, and we will look through those near the end. If you don't feel comfortable asking these questions in a forum setting, then just feel free to reach out to me afterwards and ask those questions specifically to me if you'd like. These views are my own, so there are lots of different opinions out there, different ideas. And if you've seen anything that's contradicting, or if there's something that you thought of something differently, happy to chat it out, welcoming ideas. So how do you even establish yourself as an expert in the first place? So you're going to establish your expertise. 7 advantages of being an expert in your niche. I'm going to read each one of these out. So people call you rather than you having to call them. Wouldn't that be great? You'll attract more business with less effort. Amazing. You are more easily referable, which is incredible because we've actually built our business off of referrals only. So it's pretty amazing when that just happens. The media will be interested in interviewing you. That should probably be number 7. It's not necessarily the thing, but we'll go over your goals in a second as well. You can virtually eliminate the competition. When you become an expert in your field, especially if you have a different way of thinking or a different value proposition, your competition doesn't matter anymore because you're just going to get referrals nonstop. There's no need to sell your services because you provide solutions now, right? So you don't have to proactively be reaching out for sales all the time because you know and people know that you provide those solutions, and you just have to become top of mind. And then you can command a higher fee as well. So these are the really huge advantages of becoming an expert in your niche. Now we have to think about, what am I an expert in the first place? So you might not know that answer yet, but one of the things that you can do is ask your friends, ask your coworkers, ask your business partners, ask people of what they think of you as the expert in. So some people will say that, like, for instance, I'm an expert in social media. Other people might think of me only for strategy. So it's an interesting position you can put yourself in if you wanted to become the expert in your field. So you really have to craft your story and your idea behind it. You have to be credible, so you gotta have to know what you're doing. You have to build trust, and you have to have a unique perspective. And the unique perspective is the most important one here, because what happens is, even if you're agreeing with the people in your industry, if you have a little bit of a different idea or a different way of doing things that actually has proven credible results, you now become the expert that thinks a bit differently. So for us, for instance, we always think of social media as being a human-to-human connection. So a lot of people will use social media to blast ads, to showcase all the things that they do. Whereas when we look at it as a way to be social, actually. So when we think about social media, we are really thinking about the humans behind it on the other end and how we can attract those people and how we can start conversations with them from a human to human perspective. So when you think about what kind of unique perspective you have, you will outdo your competition based on that unique ability to be able to find solutions for people, like let's say their clients. So the fastest way to actually establish yourself is to be a specialist rather than a generalist. So I think all of us as either business owners, or I'm sure everyone on this call right now, are very much so generalists. We do everything and we have to do it for now. Some of us might have teams that we can outsource information to and outsource tasks to, but at the beginning, we definitely take on a lot of stuff ourselves. So if we can start to narrow down a little bit on what actually makes us special and what our unique perspective is, that's when you start to really hone in on your speciality. So there's 3 important stages to include when you're crafting your brand story or your story. You want to present the problem that you've experienced. So this is like a backgrounder. You want to share what the solution is. So you share your search for a resolution and reveal what the solution is. So when you're trying to craft your story, we'll talk about personal branding versus business branding as well. But if you're especially going to go towards the personal branding side and you personally be an expert in something, we want to look at your story and how you became an expert in that field. So yes, you have your unique perspective, you're a specialist rather than a generalist, and now you want to sort of craft your message around that so people know exactly why they would call you or why they would think of you in the first place. Do people already know that you're an expert? That's a really big question. And the ways that you can really find out if that's true, if people do think of you as an expert in your field, do people tag you on social media to answer questions or refer business to you? I get it all the time. If there's a question about websites or social media, immediately tagged on a post, which is amazing. That's fantastic that people think of us like that. Do you get referrals from people you've never met before? I'm sure you all do. Do people know who you are, what you do, and how you can help them? If they don't, that comes to your brand story. You want to position yourself that way so that people remember you for that thing. Are you the first person that pops into people's heads when they're thinking of your field? So I can say that for us, for social media specifically, a lot of people do tag us for social. A lot of people do refer us for social because I know we do things a little bit differently with that human to human approach. So, I mean, we have tons of competition in this space, absolutely, but we attract a certain type of people and a certain type of client. So when you're crafting your brand story or your message, that's the kind of information you want to be able to put in there is what's your ideal client? Who do you want to work with? Who do you think wants to work with you? Why are you an expert in this field and how can you actually provide a solution? So if you do get all these things happening, you already are an expert in your field. So let's consider some other options here. What is your goal as an expert in the first place? You know, this is something that's really important to consider. And again, I'll remind you guys, you will get this video as well as the slides. So all this information will be given to you afterwards when Tyler sends it around. So what's your goal as an expert? What do you want out of this? Do you want more leads for your business? You're probably going to say yes to all of these things. That's fine. Do you want paid speaking gigs? Do you want to get paid $5,000 to do a keynote speech at some event? Do you want to write a book? Do you want to become an author? Do you want to be featured in magazines, media interviews, establish a network of other experts to join forces? Maybe you're going to have this alliance of creators that are just, you know, the experts in their fields, and now you can tag team with specific clients, for instance, as like a large organization. Do you want to sell books? So you can become an author, but you don't necessarily have to sell the book, which we'll get into a little bit. Do you want to sell books? There is another reason that you want to become an expert in your field. If there is, please, please, please put it into the chat or let me know at the very end when we do our Q&A. So this is the typical reasons why people want to become an expert, though there definitely might be other reasons. Maybe you just want to feel special. Who knows? Just let me know at the end if there's another idea hidden here that I could add to this deck. Should you consider a personal brand? So you might be an expert in the field. you also might be an expert in your industry, but let's say your business itself is the expert. So you might have a unique value proposition and a positioning, but what if someone else in your organization, you've paired up with them and that actually becomes the most strong expert story of all? So if you're going to become the expert, you are the expert, should you consider a personal brand? So basically, personal branding is the practice of people marketing themselves as brand. So if you think about things like Tim Hortons and Starbucks, for instance, they both sell coffee. We know this, but they actually have a totally different feel to them. So there's certain words that come to mind when you're thinking about Tim Hortons and the different ones that come to mind when you're thinking about it, Starbucks, for instance, and totally different for like Timothy's or Second Cup. Now they all sell coffee, but what makes them stand out? So your personal brand is how you promote yourself. It's those words that you want to be forefront so that when people think of you, they think of these words and they think of you. It's the unique combination of skills, experience, and personality that you want the world to see. It is the telling of your story and how it reflects or conduct behavior, spoken or unspoken words and attitudes. So how do you want to be remembered? If you'd like to have a personal brand, we'll go over a little bit of the difference between you just being the expert and owning a business, and then you being an expert and wanting to be the owner of a business, but you also want to be an author, but you also want to be a keynote speaker. Okay, so there's a little bit of a different way to position yourself. So when you're thinking about if you decided that a personal brand is for you, here's some things to consider as next steps. And I'm going to just skip to this one for a second, go back. So if you decide that you are the expert, there are some other avenues. Let's say you're going to create a website, which we'll go back to that slide. You now want to consider, if you're going to be the expert, do you need to have your own website? Do you need to have your own brand? If you are going to the personal brand route, then under that website, you would have things like your business. I'm an author and I do paid speaking. Here's how to book me. Okay, so I'm going to go back to that slide. If you decide that that's the right way to go for you, some ideas to consider would be to create a website that's all about why you are awesome and why people should love you and work with you. So you want to include your ventures and businesses. So you could be the owner of a business, or you could be working for an organization that you are an expert in the field, but the organization is allowing you to go out and do public speaking and to write books, but still work there, for instance. So you want to showcase who you are as a person and why you're an expert in that field. You have a way for people to book you as a speaker if that's the avenue you'd like to go. You can include, if you put your book on Amazon, for instance, you can include that as a call to action on your website. You can also create a media kit that includes your headshot, title, and brand story. And so why number, not a number at all, it's a letter, D is important, is because if you are wanting to be on the news or to be featured in magazines or to write articles or to be the expert in the media, so the media wants to call you because you're an expert in this field, they want to be able to quickly download things. They want to be able to access this information. So if you have headshots, if you have logos, brand colors for yourself, remember, this is you as a personal brand. Your title, your fonts, your brand story, your bio, things like that. That's what you'd want to include on a website. You can also put it on your LinkedIn as well. So personal branding is really if you want to take yourself outside of your business and showcase yourself as the expert that happens to own a business, or that happens to be an author, or that happens to do paid speaking gigs. So you want to consider that. And if you're not sure, we can chat about it afterwards as well, if that's the right avenue for you or not. 4 thought leadership personalities. So yes, sometimes we think we have lots of different personalities on every single day. But there's basically 4 thought personalities that are, thought leadership personalities that you could assume when building a presence on social media, according to Beth Kanter. So the conversationalist, geez, should have read that out loud first. Someone who initiates conversations with fans, peers, or experts. Now, this could be someone that is a little bit on the controversial side, always asking, always showing, always trying to get people involved and to try and see a more of a controversial side, because you have your own ideas in your own niche. And when you're describing things to people, it might actually be quite controversial. So you want to be able to either choose that or to move to a different type of thought leadership personality. So if you want to be a little bit controversial, if you want to start conversations, if you want to have people stop and think for a second, that is a conversationalist. If you are an amplifier, it's someone who reshares content created by other influencers, brands, and fans. So really that's someone that is showing that they're a good resource for information and they're able to amplify the information of other people, basically. So you do want to put your information in there for yourself, but you also want to share other people's created content. The content curator, so someone who collates the best content in a niche, summarizes it, and shares it with followers. So a lot of the time this will be if you're in the digital marketing space, you would review specific apps, for instance. If you have different types of ways to think about things, you could actually read someone's article in your niche and then rebuttal it, for instance. So it is a little bit of a conversationalist, but you also have this content that you're constantly creating based on other people in your space. The responder, so someone who is active on communities and answers questions asked by members in that community. So this is really great for Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups. It's great for forums like Quora and Medium and Reddit. So people are asking questions in those communities, and because you're an expert in the field, you are showcasing your unique value proposition, your unique positioning by answering those questions. And so if you're the responder, you could also possibly become the content curator as well. So as you're responding to people in your unique way, you then could possibly write a blog or do a video also answering that question. So you could become a content curator based on other people's answers for that particular question. Marketing initiatives that will position you as an expert. So there's about 10 of them. And we can chat about this stuff at the end as well. If you guys have questions, we'll save them all to the end. You can publish a book, or at least a white paper. If you're like, well, I'm terrified to write a book and it's gonna take me forever. I don't think I need to be, I don't think I need to write a book to become an expert. I'm in this boat myself. I don't really want to write a book. I don't really think it's valuable to me at all. But I think for a lot of people, a lot of our clients, for instance, they actually do write books to hand them out as business cards, or when they get paid to do that public speaking idea, they actually bring books with them. So it is an amplifier that can help you. What I've done instead was write a white paper. So I wrote a downloadable white paper. It's like 30 pages long around community management. So how do you use social media to amplify and start meaningful relationships online? So that kind of white paper idea, I think, is just as good as a book, especially with everything happening right now. We don't actually want to print a bunch of books out, for instance. There could be a downloadable version, which is basically a white paper. So the key here is to create something original that fills the gap in your market, to find a topic that's missing, do your research, and make sure that you're very comfortable talking about this. So sometimes what happens is we find a very great niche that we can get into, and we're like, oh yeah, I could be an expert in this field. Absolutely. And then if you get a podcast interview or if you have to do a presentation, you're like, I have about a minute's worth of talking. Maybe I'm not an expert in this field, or maybe I should change my topic. So just consider that as you're coming up with ideas for white papers or books, for instance. So at this point, becoming a best-selling author should not be your main focus. So when you want to basically just teach valuable lessons and use this book as another way to build an audience to establish your brand. So there's a separate focus here. If you'd like to become a best-selling author, absolutely write a book, put it on Amazon, do your marketing around that to try and get as many downloads or purchases as possible. But self-publishing world is definitely difficult. And if you'd like to navigate that, I have some tips around that, but you can certainly ask. It just is an interesting pivot. You'd have to really pivot a little bit on your business to be able to take the time to write this book, to be able to publish it, and then to sell it online. So right now, if you want to use a book or a white paper, it's a great resource. So the resource could be for you to build your email list, for instance. The resource could be for you to showcase how much of a thought leadership you are. There's tons of ways to utilize white papers and books. And you want to put that in as a marketing initiative and a campaign idea if you decide to do one of these white paper or book as valuable lessons only. Number 2, publish your case studies. So I was quite shocked when I saw this. You know, at the very bottom, ebooks, podcasts, webcasts, infographics, tools. I was like, oh, that's quite interesting, because I actually would focus a lot on podcasting, actually. So it was interesting to see this graph, and case studies were number 1. So case studies are basically a summary of what you've been able to do to help your clients, for instance, and why your expertise came into play during that solution that you provided that client. So if you look at case studies, I didn't even think it was going to be that high on the list, and it is. So case studies would be a great way to position yourself as an authority in your industry, and you want to be able to publish those on your website. So you could have on your website, you could have a services page. You could also have a case studies within that services page that was relevant to that service, or you could have a separate landing page on your website called case studies specifically. I would usually go for the first one, because if people hit your website and they actually see that you have this really great solution, and then there's testimonials or case studies right on that page, it's a little bit of a better convincing statement rather than going totally separate to another person, like another page on your website. Testimonials are another great way. So case studies are quite lengthy. They have to have, you know, a goal, what the solution was, how your expertise has affected that solution, and why they would sort of come back. Testimonials are basically just what other people are saying about you and how awesome you are. So Guy Kawasaki here says, brands are built on what people are saying about you, not what you're saying about yourself. And I don't know if you guys know, if you ever gone to, if you ever want to go to a restaurant, for instance, and you typed in Thai food near me, and a whole bunch of listing came up, and some of them were like 2 stars, one was a 5 stars, there was some bad reviews on the other one. You know, it's kind of like a mix of information. And you're like, well, I don't really want to go to that place because it has a couple bad reviews on it and 2 stars. And then your best friend calls you and says, oh my God, we have to try this Thai place up by you. It's called blah, blah, blah. And you're like, I just looked that up and I saw that online, it actually had pretty bad reviews. And originally you're like, I can't go there. It has bad reviews. But your best friend says, I've been there so many times, we gotta go. I'm telling you, it's really good. Your gut now changes to go, oh, maybe it is good then. I guess I'll trust you because I know you. So really, when you think about brands, the best people to sell your services or products are people that have already used it, that love your brand and products. So if you're going to use testimonials as an initiative, I highly recommend Google reviews, obviously for that reason I just talked about. If you're a service-based business, absolutely reviews. If you're a product-based business, you might want to consider getting testimonials in video or user-generated content, asking people, did you love my product? Please send us this and we'll give you 10% off your next order. There's ways that you can get user-generated content and testimonials if you just ask. So a lot of people just won't just do it. You kind of have to ask. So there is one that I just did, for instance, here. It is a Spice Affair. They asked if we could, I don't know if you can see my camera at all, but they asked if we could basically just do a review online. Here's our social media handles, send us a review and we'll give you a percentage off your next order. And I was like, that's brilliant, I need to do that. But if you don't ask, people are kind of lazy. I don't know if you know that, but if you don't ask, you really won't get too many people. But if you make it as a campaign and you actually ask for testimonials and you ask for user-generated content, you'll have a much better result if you just go ahead and ask. Another thing you can do is teach a class or speak publicly. So teaching a class like this one is exactly how you position yourself as an expert. It's okay to not have all the answers, but you should at least have most of them. So at the end, when we do our Q&A, if I don't have some of the answers that you guys might have questions for, I would still possibly be considered an expert in the field, but I would want to make sure I knew those answers. Like the way that I would be is I'd have to research it. I want to know it all. I want to know everything about it because I'm so passionate about it that I feel like you guys would probably be the same as well. So you can also get booked at various events, so panels or as a guest on a hosted show like a Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube live series. So if you're going to become an expert, you really want to get your brand story straight. You want to get your topic straight. So you want to know, most of the stuff that I talk about is social media, for instance, or entrepreneurship in general. So get your story together. What are the types of things that you'd want to talk about? Is it a bit different than everybody else? When you're looking at getting booked at various events or teaching an online class, look at your audience. Who's your audience? What would they want to know? Would they want to know the deep down secrets of Instagram and how to get clients from Instagram? Or would they want to know, top 3 reasons why something? So really think about who your audience is and what type of information that they actually would want to know about. You are an expert in something. You just have to craft your message and your titles around what the audience actually wants to hear. You can even start a podcast. If anyone's freaking out right now going, nope, can't do it, don't like to talk at all, that's fine. So podcasting is a really great way to build a dedicated audience. It's one of those things that everybody wants to do, but not everybody has the gumption or know how to take the leap. So I'm in that boat as well, where I've so many people asking if I would like to do a podcast show with them. And I immediately go, I don't have time for that. Like my initial reaction is like, I can't. But if it is something that you want to use as a marketing tool and to really showcase your expertise, it is a good platform to really consider. So if you think about it, a podcast is really just a bunch of blogs or vlogs, which are video blogs, which is shortened to vlogs. That's not a typo. And there's just a recorded and different type of process, really. So you have lots of stuff to say and an audience that will listen. So if you just have the gift of the gab, consider doing your own podcast. And if you are not necessarily ready for a podcast idea, I do have a friend that actually does programs around launching podcasts. So let me know if you are really considering a podcast. I can direct you and steer you in that direction. But if you're not ready, that's okay. So if you'd like to just wet your feet before jumping in to the deep end there, it might be a really great place to start is just being a guest on someone else's podcast. So just make sure that they have the right target market and that you can use this content on social media as well. So some podcasts, I've been featured on a few podcasts, which are fantastic. And what they do is they actually, after the podcast is recorded, they put together this little graphic design sort of package for you. So they have, your little excerpts of cool information that you said. They create graphics around it for you to promote it. So podcasts are actually a very good resource and way for you to market yourself as an expert. But when you think about it, you really do have to come up with your story first and the types of stuff you want to talk about. So every time that I talk on a podcast, I usually have the topic using Instagram as a cold calling tool. So normally when I pitch that idea to a podcast that does accept guests, I always get a response back saying, whoa, what are you talking about? You can't use Instagram as a cold calling tool. And I was like, let me change your mind. And so I get really excited about that topic. So that would be something that I would love to be able to be on lots of podcasts and talk about, but eventually I'm going to have to change it up a little bit. So I'm not doing the same thing over and over and over. So your expertise is one thing, but your topics are another. Okay. And just make sure you're using all the stuff on social media and post on social. You can create a blog as well. So if you do decide to go the personal branding route, for instance, you can either put your blog on your personal brand website, or you can also put it on your regular website if you are the solopreneur of the business, for instance. So your business website. So blogging is a great way to showcase your expertise. You'd want to come up with a content calendar and plan out your blog topics ahead of time. So that kind of goes back to, what does your audience want to hear? What are you an expert in and can talk about? And how can you use these blogs as a campaign to then be able to maybe be featured on a podcast, maybe do one of those Facebook live shows? And so at the end of your like either the live or at the end of an interview that you did, you can actually direct people back to the blog. So that drives more people to your website. And then if you have a call to action at the end of your blog, that could possibly convert new visitors into either purchasing something or booking a strategy call with you, or even signing up for your newsletter, for instance, or following you on Instagram or another social media tool. So the blogs itself is what's going to make you an expert, and you can also use them as ideas for other topics to do all the other things that we just talked about. So if you decide to write a book, if you decide to do public speaking, if you decide to be a guest on a podcast, you can take these topics and actually pitch them out to those types of platforms as well. So you can use all this content on social. You want to share it in LinkedIn groups as well as Facebook groups. There's also this place on LinkedIn, when you go to post something on LinkedIn, like your personal page or your business page, but your personal page, let's say, you can either do a post or you can do an article. So you can post a picture, a video, text, or an article. The articles used to live in this thing called Pulse, which was all the articles all over LinkedIn. And it's like a separate place where you can read all these articles and blogs. So if you decide to put your article on LinkedIn, just make sure that it actually doesn't have exactly all the same words as it does on your website. So if you want to put your blog on your website, don't copy and paste it verbatim directly onto your LinkedIn article. It becomes duplicate content, and Google actually gets confused as to which one to show. And because LinkedIn actually has more authority than your website does, it's probably going to show the LinkedIn article first. If that's what you'd like, that's cool, do it. But Google will definitely get confused as to where they should be pointed. And sometimes it won't point it anywhere because it's like, I don't know what you want me to do. So if you write an article on your website, you're going to then take the LinkedIn, take a little snippet to write your article. And then under that, you'll say, to read the full article, click here. That will actually go to your website, which hopefully then you have as a call to action that will be able to convert as well. And next, guest blogs. So let's say you don't want to have a blog on your website, or you do have a blog on your website, but you want to reach other people's audiences as well. So I probably get an email a day, sometimes 5 a day, saying, wow, this is a really great article you have on your website. Would you mind including my link to this article as well? So let's say they have a product or an app, and I wrote a blog about top 10 apps we use for social media. People will email me saying, can you include this particular product in your blog? And I'm like, no, I didn't try it. I don't really want to do that. But if you reverse that and you talk to other people, for instance, that have great blogs, that have authority, and you're like, can I be a guest blogger for you? Would you mind if I wrote a blog and you add it to your website and do all the link backs to my website? There's a lot of people that will do that, especially if you have strategic partnerships that have the same target market as you, but you might not offer exactly the same thing. So let's say you have, like for us, for instance, we're social media. Let's say there's an SEO company or a pay-per-click company that does Google ads. Their audience might actually want to know something about social media that I know that I'm an expert in. So I'll write a blog and I'll say to these guys, well, I know you do SEO and I know you do pay-per-click, but I think your audience might actually like this a lot. Would you mind putting this on your website as a guest blog? 9 times out of 10, they'll say yes, unless they don't take guest blogs at all. But if you're convincing enough, maybe you'll be able to change their mind. You might even become a regular. So that type of relationship would be invaluable to you if you would like to write blogs on other people's websites, for instance. Let's go to Facebook. So you could create your own Facebook group if you'd like. I don't know if you guys are part of any Facebook groups that are run by experts. So I'm a part of a few of them, actually, that the expert in the field, they have their own ideas, their own way of thinking, and they created a Facebook group that has now thousands and thousands of people that come there. So one lady, her name's Rachel, she has a social media company that she basically trains social media managers. So everything about this group is all about social media. When we go there, we know we're getting pitched to in a way, but the information that she posts in the group is fantastic. Like, it's brand new stuff that we didn't know about. That's where I get a lot of my brand new information from, is in these groups. So if you have a group and you want to show that you're an authority figure, for instance, or a thought leader, creating your own Facebook group actually might be a really great way to build a community online. And they think you're a leader regardless, because you're posting really great content in there. Just make sure that the people that are coming to the group are actually your target market, right? So you don't want to have I'm sure you'll get your competition in there to watch what you're doing, but you don't want the competition to basically steal your ideas. So just watch that. But make sure the people that are coming into your group, as you can have a private group, that they are actually your target market. Then you want to develop your social media content around all of this stuff. So if we go back and think about all the different types of marketing initiatives you can do, now you want to be able to create social media content that aligns with your end goal. So becoming the expert is your end goal. Consider posting a mix of content to showcase your point of view. Provide real value for your audience. Make sure you answer questions in groups as well. So we were talking about the Facebook groups, the LinkedIn groups. You want to, and you could even do the forums as well. The mix of content you want to post is what I call the 3 E's. So you just don't want to post, I sell this, you should buy it. I sold this thing, look at this, you should buy it. You want to be actually helpful, which would be great. You want to become the expert. You want to showcase that you know what you're talking about. So you can post things that are educational, entertaining, and engaging. That's the perfect mix of content, as well as a selling or call to action post. So if you think about it, that's 4 posts that you already have each week, for instance. So if you post something educational, it could be something that was part of your blog, for instance. Entertaining, it could be you showing someone how to do something. It could be you showcasing your personality as well. And engaging. So if let's say you're going to be going and doing public speaking, we want to know a little bit about the entertaining side of you, or how you can capture an audience. So videos might be a really great idea to do for the entertaining side of it. When it comes to engaging, you want to ask questions that invoke people to answer. So a lot of the time, which I've talked about this before, is if you misspell something, you'll get a lot of engagement. I'm not recommending you do that, but it's true. So we did a post quite a few years ago, and it was for this really edgy interior design company. And they're like, yeah, let's mess with them. Let's mess with people. I don't care. Let's do it. I want to get engagement. I'm like, all right. So we misspelled every word that was there. So we had so many grammar people coming onto the posts and changing it, like, no, you spelled this wrong. Change this to this. And then it became this running joke. So they had hundreds of comments on this one post because they misspelled a word to trick people into commenting. So I'm not saying do that, but it does work. Something like just asking a very pointed question. You know, if you say, I have a point of view, would you choose A or B? And then you can use a program called Canva, C-A-N-V-A. It's a graphic design tool program that you can use on your phone or on your computer. And you can have 2 pictures side by side, and you can have A or B up in the corners. And just ask people a question, or finish this statement. Top 3 reasons, blah, 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 blah. 1 is this, 2 is this. Tell me what 3 is. people want to voice their opinion. People want to hear themselves speak. People want to possibly be controversial in their answers. So if you want to post something engaging, highly recommend asking questions. That is the best way to get the engagement. Another way you can get engagement is just ask people to share. So if you like this post, share it. I know on Instagram you can't really share a post unless you have an additional app called Repost app, but they can share it to stories if you choose that. So on LinkedIn, there is this magic number when it comes to you being noticed or recognized or considered as an expert in your field. And it shouldn't matter. The more followers you have, the more connections you have, the more people assume that you're an expert in the first place. But on LinkedIn, there's this weird thing that happens that if you have less than 500 connections, you tend not to be looked at as an expert in your field. And it's a psychology thing. It just happens automatically to people when they visit your profile. So what I say is, usually when you want to become an expert in your field, LinkedIn is the place to try and get at least 500 connections. And it might not be meaningful connections at the beginning, but you can work towards that. So I would say trying to connect with as many people in your target audience and strategic partnerships as possible. But then later on, after you get your 500 connections, look at weeding them out and trying to get better connections. It's a tactic. It's maybe not the best tactic, but it's something that will work, especially if you want to launch yourself as an expert and you have under 500 connections. You really are having a detriment to yourself at that point. So build a larger, more engaged audience. The larger and more engaged your audience is, the better chances you'll have to convert those connections through your marketing efforts. And that actually goes for all platforms like Facebook and Instagram. Twitter seems to be a little bit of a dead space right now. It's really good for certain industries, but definitely not all. Facebook is really great to have because of SEO, which is search engine optimization. So when people are Googling your names or Googling specific keywords, especially with the business name that you have in there, you will come up on Facebook more than your website, for instance. So unless you're doing a lot of SEO, for instance, for your website. But the more connections that you can attain and acquire, the more people will assume that you're an expert based on the amount of connections that you have. And the benefit to that is actually being able to possibly convert people in your connections through your marketing efforts. I want you guys to really focus on actually connecting with people. So there's the side of social media that is community management based. And so really what that means is a lot of people, what they do on social media, they post and then they don't do anything else, right? Which is kind of normal. A lot of people do that. We call that post and ghost. So if you're going to just post your stuff on social media without the 3 E's, especially, you're sort of walking into a networking event, throwing business cards in the air and then leaving. You didn't talk to anybody, you didn't say hello, you didn't compliment someone, you didn't get valuable information. You're just like, I'm here, I'm gone. So that's kind of what happens on social media when that's that post and ghost scenario. So when it comes to community management, that's that next step. So you're building your authority through your content, which is fantastic, but now you actually have to reach out to people that would be in your target market. So if you're trying to sell a book or you're trying to do anything B2C, which is like business to consumer, then there's certain platforms that will work really well, like LinkedIn, like Instagram. All of the platforms doesn't work very well for that. If you're doing business to business, those platforms work as well as Facebook. So you can actually follow businesses as your business page on Facebook as well and interact with those business pages. So LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram are really great for B2B. Now we have to think about it's all H to H. Okay, so it's all human to human. If you're trying to get on stages, you're going to want to target people that have the ability to bring you on stage. So whether that's through corporate relationships, which would be a LinkedIn push, whether that's through being on podcasts or interviews or panels. If you want to be part of a summit, for instance, as an expert at a summit, you'd want to search those through Instagram. Instagram's actually a really great tool to find those types of events. And Facebook's actually pretty good for that too, because anyone that's going to be having an event like that will usually post it on Facebook under the event section. And you can type in certain keywords, and then there's a tab called events, and you can see all the events that are happening in your industry with those keywords. If they're already posted on Facebook, it might be too late for you to become the expert in it, but it might be really great to write a blog about that so that you can be showcased as an expert for next year's summit, for instance. So there's tons and tons and tons of marketing initiatives that you can do around becoming an expert, but social media is a really great tool to be able to connect with people that didn't know you existed. So they didn't know you existed. You're now reaching out through Instagram specifically and LinkedIn and starting conversations. The best way to start a conversation is to just be a person and be a human, because they're also human. So that goes back to the H to H thing. So human to human approach. So you'd never want to just pitch yourself. Don't pitch yourself all the time. People will come. If you're showcasing yourself as an expert, people will want to talk to you about it. It's automatic. If you are showcasing yourself that you're an expert and you don't know necessarily what you're talking about, then people might not. But you're going to do your background check and you're going to make sure that you are an expert in that field. So just don't take these opportunities just to sell all the time. So you want to give away valuable insights and ideas for free. So all those things we talked about should be more of a free type of thing where you are just telling people the things that you know, and it just happens to be great information that they needed to learn. So being an expert will attract the right people to you, and that will trust you, what you have to say, and your unique positioning. Just a reminder, why you want to become an expert in the first place. And we'll talk about if there's any other ideas here as well. People call you rather than having you have to call them. You'll attract more business with much less effort. You'll be more easily referable and memorable. The media will be interested in interviewing you. That's a possibility depending on your topic. You can virtually eliminate the competition, especially if you have a unique value proposition or a unique positioning. No need to sell your services. You just provide solutions. People will come to you. So you're never selling your service. You're just providing solutions based on people wanting to be part of your world. And you can command a higher fee as well. So if you have service or product and it's in high demand and you're the expert in this field, you can also have higher fees if you'd like. It's Q&A time. We're a little bit ahead of time. That's perfect. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here for a second so you guys can reach out to me through social. You can reach out through my email, text me if you'd like, any of those things. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a sec. And I'm going to go into the chat to see if there's any specific questions, but I also want you guys to come on to your microphone or your video if you'd like and ask questions if you have as well. Okay, I have an... All right, so somebody wants to possibly do a book, so that's amazing. I'll talk about that in a second. Is that 500 connections mark something that LinkedIn algorithm uses to change visibility of posts? No, not necessarily. So the visibility of posts will be, when people go to LinkedIn, there's two options. One is most popular. So you can look at your feed, which is the most popular post, or you can look at most recent, similar to Facebook, but it's harder to find on Facebook now. So LinkedIn has most popular, which means the algorithm has changed a bit to say your connections, out of all your connections, these are the posts that were most popular, so go and look at these instead. If you change it to most recent, which I would do, I would then see everyone that was posting as the time comes. So the 500 connections thing doesn't necessarily change the algorithm at all. It just makes you more of an authority in your field. It's almost like a popularity contest, which is fine. I don't want to be popular on LinkedIn. I just want to get booking and gigs, right? Like, okay, so I tried to make those 3 E's you taught us, but no engagement I have seen. Okay, so when it comes to posting, the 3 E's that we talked about, the entertaining, engaging, and educational, you don't necessarily, you're not going to get engagement right away. Okay, so if your audience is a little bit of a inactive audience in the first place, by posting those kind of questions, you're not going to immediately get a bunch of people answering. What is going to help you change that is proactive community management, especially on Instagram. So if you're not getting a lot of people asking questions, you can then send that post directly to people in a direct message, for instance, to say, hey, I just posted this, what do you think? And then what happens is Instagram gets tricked by the amount of engagement that that post has and goes, whoa, this account must be popular if they get that many questions, that many answers on that. And then they start to show your content more often to people that are following you. So it'll also show up, your post might also show up in, when you go into Instagram, there's a search bar. And when you search for a specific hashtag, for instance, there's 2 things that pop up. It's the top post and the most recent, very similar to LinkedIn we just talked about. And so the most popular ones, if you have that much engagement and you're asking people questions and actually sending to people to ask them, comment on this, please, then your post will be able to show up in the top post. So it's kind of a cool way to trick Instagram. I love tricking Instagram and Facebook, mind you. I don't know if I've talked about that before, but I love it. If I don't have to pay for ads, I'm all over that. If I can do stuff organically and like on the human level, that's what I want to focus on. So we have, what is a journey to your speciality? Was this by accident or intentional? What advice would you give to a generalist who is not sure what they specialize in? I would actually do a survey and ask everybody that I know to tell me what they think I'm an expert in. What do you think I'm popular in? Why do you think I'm special? That right there is called user experience. How did someone experience you and your service or product? So if you're going to ask people, tell me what you think about what I do. I can ask my family right now what they think I do. They would have no freaking clue. They're like, websites or something online? I don't know. Don't ask your family because they're not going to have a clue what you're talking about. But if you talk to previous clients or previous strategic partners, anyone in Facebook groups, stuff like that, you can do a survey and just ask them what you think I know. And if I asked you right now, for instance, what would you be able to talk about for 10 minutes straight? What could you talk about? That right there, that gut feeling you just had of like, I got it, that's your expertise. That happens to be what you're an expert in. You just didn't really realize it yet. It's something you can talk about for a long time, but imagine now taking that little bit of a change and going, well, a lot of people talk about gut health, for instance, like naturopaths and nutritionists. And everyone has their own little tiny thing that worked differently, because when you create your brand story, you actually have had that experience. You've seen it happen. So now it's not just gut health. It's like antioxidants change your gut health, right? So if you try and position yourself in a way that's a little bit different than the general public of who you work with and who your competition is, that's how you become an expert. So sure, I might be an expert in social media, but when I tried to narrow it down, I noticed that most people were just stuck on Instagram. They're like, I have no idea what to do. What is what is a hashtag? So what I did was I sort of positioned myself in a way where now you can use Instagram as a cold calling tool. And that changed a lot because everybody started booking it. Everyone was like, what the hell are you talking about? You can't use, and I'm like, yes, you can. So you have your own unique value proposition and your positioning. And when you ask yourself, what can I talk about for 10 minutes straight? That's your expertise. So I have some more questions in here. I just want to make sure. Okay, so I have lots of connections on LinkedIn. I'm trying to get to 500. Yes. People don't accept my invitation. Yes. Yeah. Sometimes it happens. What you should do. So when you're trying to connect with people on LinkedIn, there's 2 ways that you can do it. So when you originally hit, you're looking for keywords and you're looking to search people and then their name comes up, you can hit the word just connect. But then there's an additional option that says add a note. So that's how you trick LinkedIn to not paying for Sales Navigator because I don't know if I mentioned, but like I hate paying for stuff like that. So if you want to trick LinkedIn, you add a note. So the note, just please don't add the generic note of, I think we have synergies and we should connect, or we have multiple connections that are the same people. Just avoid that kind of stuff and actually look at the person, actually look to see. So maybe you actually went to the same high school, or, you know, I'm from Nova Scotia. Maybe they went to school in Nova Scotia. You can start that conversation. How would you start a conversation at a networking event? Would you walk up and say, hi, I heard we have synergies. Let's connect. Right? Like you wouldn't. So how would you start the conversation in person? That's how you want to position that conversation online. Just start a conversation. Don't overthink it, right? Because everybody overthinks the social media stuff. So if you don't want to overthink that, add the note. What they can do is then preview the note without looking at your profile, and they can actually see what you're all about. So tell them a joke if you want, depending on your brand personality. You know, we do a lot of stuff about tacos. Like I could send something that says, let's taco about marketing or something silly. So it kind of depends on your personality, but definitely don't go in with the hard sell. Add the note for sure, and you will see a little bit of a different response on that. How would you go about becoming a keynote speaker? So that's a very loaded question, and I'm glad that you asked that question. To become a speaker on a podcast is like, it's so easy. I can't even tell you. You literally just message them and say, hey, do you need any guests? And they'll say, yes, I'm recording next week. Do you want to be the guest on the show? Super duper easy. Make sure you have a headshot ready and your bio ready. So those are the two things you absolutely need ready no matter what. And your title, obviously, what you want to talk about. There's a lot of podcast websites out that actually have a form that you can fill out. I've done so many of those. Sometimes you get a call back, sometimes you don't. I usually follow up with them on Instagram or social media just to be like, I filled out a form. What's up? I haven't heard from you in 2 weeks. So that little extra push would be great. Keynote speaker is a little bit different. So you can become a panelist. You can become an expert in a summit or an event, things like that. Super, super duper easy. But when it comes to becoming a keynote speaker, and this is a big jump. So keynote speakers usually get paid $5,000 plus to become a motivational storyteller like TEDx or in corporate or TED Talks. So I would say for a keynote speaker specifically, I would take a course to really craft your keynote speech. It's a different type of deliverable, and you really have to have a very strong emotional connection to your story and to have that emotional connection to the audience. So I would say pay for a course or take a course on public speaking and crafting your keynote speech as well. The rest of the stuff, just apply. Claim you're an expert and go. And you will get people saying, that's a great topic. I want you on my show. And then the question about LinkedIn, perfect. And thank you for the valuable information. Okay. Any other questions from you guys now that we've sort of went through ideas here? Any other questions or comments or starting conversations?
Yeah, Holly, it's Carl here.
Hey, Carl.
How's it going? Good to see you. There we go. Get my try and get my video going. Oops. There we go.
There you are.
I totally love what you're saying about the Instagram as a cold calling tool. I use that quite a bit myself, so I think that was an awesome comment. And you know, I'd say to people they could use that too for sure. Definitely a good tool. I had a question though about the blogs. Do you think I had somebody tell me that they're sort of not really relevant anymore these days, a little bit outdated? Do you think they're still relevant, or is that just an opinion?
It's an opinion. So a lot of SEO people will say blogs are irrelevant because it's too much work to try and get your blog out there as the answers to people searching for specific keywords. But there's a totally different way to use them. So if you're going to use them as a thought leadership, I highly recommend you writing blogs or doing vlogs, video blogs. So you're showcasing your expertise in a wide range of information. So you can have a blog that has 500 to 1500 words in it. You're not maybe going to be found for SEO purposes, but who's going to quote unquote Google looking for an expert in that specific field and find your blog as the answer? Not many people. So that's one side of it. The other side is you now have this great and valuable information that you can pull from on an ongoing basis, which is called evergreen content. So you can use it for your social media. You can, if you have a top 10 list, you can take all that information out and use it for a very long time. But that one piece of content sits on your site forever. And like I said, it doesn't necessarily mean that Google's going to find it. It means that you can use it as answers. So if you are doing the social listening through stuff like Quora and Medium and Reddit, and you're searching keywords and people are asking specific questions, you can go, ding, 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 I have the answer to that. I happen to be the expert in that. Here's this lovely blog I wrote about it. Or here's a video that I did on YouTube because you're trying to get more YouTube subscribers. So it's a really different way to look at it. Yes, blogs might be a little bit dead on the SEO side if you're not doing it effectively. I have one SEO expert that he literally searches the internet for people asking very specific questions and then sees how many answers are populated based on blogs. And he'll go, wait a second, there's something missing here. Carl needs to write a blog about this now. So he will actually write the blog for you, post it as you on your social platforms, as well as answering those questions to become an authority in that field. And so he did that for one of my blogs, and it's still by far one of the most popular pages on my entire website to date, because it answered questions that are mostly people searching for it. And it was like how to turn off video DMs on Instagram. And so I did a video blog, which is on YouTube. I then embedded that into my regular blog on my website. So the video is embedded to the site so that I have now 2 different ways to answer that question. So if people are searching on Google, maybe a video result's going to pop up. No problem. I got that on YouTube. Now maybe a blog is going to pop up. No problem. I got that on my website. Long-winded answer, but I feel so strongly about blogs that I have an opinion about the blog side of it. I really think it can be utilized in so many ways that I think it's worth it.
Right. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions for you? We're 3 minutes over. Yes, good. Okay, so Tyler's going to get this video together. He's also going to get the slide deck, and we're going to share that with you guys later. If you guys have any questions afterwards, my contact info is on there. It's also everywhere on social media, as you know, especially Instagram if you haven't known yet. But I definitely welcome any questions or ideas from you guys, and we'll see you next month. Thank you. Bye.